Charles, we are celebrating Black History Month. Joe Biden, if you didn't vote for him, apparently you ain't black, although we've already had a serious problem pointed out with today's show.
What's that?
Well, the title implies that Joe Biden had a plan.
That's true. That's true. Well, I didn't know much about this movie, and you, I believe, know a lot about the movie, so maybe we should begin by,
talking about it.
What's that guy's name? Lipton?
Oh, yeah, James Lipton.
The James Lipton edition of Jason Goodman taking us through what this movie's all about.
Well, the parody is based, of course, on a Melvin Van Peebles film called Sweet Sweetback's Badasssss Song. And it's widely regarded. This was a film that was financed by, I think, a $50,000 check from Bill Cosby to this independent filmmaker, Melvin Van Peebles. And I got to say, I saw the film a long time ago. I think most people comparing it to mainstream films would find it pretty unusual, let's say.
All right.
But it is a groundbreaking film. And to tell you the truth, in the 70s or the 60s, when he made it for the budget that he made it for, it's pretty difficult to do. And it made $15 million in the box office at the time. Even comparing it now for a low-budget independent film to have that kind of performance, it changed people's views of depictions of black people in cinema. And also, his son, Mario Van Peebles, directed New Jack City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a good choice. And there is this absurd theory out of what remains in academia that only black people can have an opinion about what happened in the past to black people.
Right.
Which, if you think about it, if you were 95% of the population, that might make a lot of sense, right? But if you're 13% of the population, that means that you can have nothing to say about white history.
Right.
And so it's really very silly. And another thing, Morgan Freeman, who I don't think is somebody generally in the same political, who holds the same political views that I might, was interviewed by Mike Wallace apparently a while back. And it's quite an interesting interview to watch it, where Wallace thinks he's going to score some points with this very famous and revered actor. He said, well, how do you feel about Black History Month? And Morgan Freeman says, I hate it. He said, are you by chance Jewish? Is there a Jewish History Month? I didn't think so. We're all Americans. Let's study American history 12 months a year. Let's not balkanize the country. That's completely the opposite from the idea that the founders had and that the country grew into. So,
but it was so sensible, wasn't it?
Oh, very sensible. And again, that's that people in academia don't get today. It's not about homogenizing thought. What you're trying to do is create an environment where people will have all sorts of different perspectives. You come at things from different perspectives than I do, and I think the show benefits from that. And people enjoy watching how we look at things differently. But in academia, it should be the case that obviously you've got to be respectful, you can't go there to break serious laws, but it's the edgy thinking often that's out there on the frontier that helps you leapfrog into new places in the universe, new helpful places in the universe. And that's what all these universities have completely lost sight of. They have, with some, I should say, most universities, most brand name universities have lost sight of that core issue that you want to encourage controversial thought and you want to pick it apart. Sometimes it's a controversial person who's off there in the side of the room not saying much for most of the year, who then pops out of nowhere and says, you realize that we've just spent $100 million to go exactly the wrong way to get to success. Like, what do you mean? Is what you want to say, not shut up, you're canceled. You can't, right? And you see that in the mediocrity of what passes for scholarship coming out of, well, in the mediocrity, we'll talk about it more, I suppose, in the First Amendment Forum, of not just mediocrity, the failure of the Harvard Corporation to deal with, I think, issues that could actually destroy the university the way they're positioned today. I mean, it's the great Harvard with this gigantic endowment at one point. and all these different professors and who have professional careers outside of academia, advising corporations how to deal with crises. The response to Cloudy and Gay is an F-, in my view. And still unresolved.
It's an FU to all of us.
Right, it's still unresolved. I mean, we could talk about this quickly, I suppose, this portion of it quickly. I saw, not this story, but actually Bill Ackman's tweet.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, I said, holy shit, this is really dangerous. What Ackman says in his tweet is that a lot of Harvard's investments are in illiquid securities. They commit money to funds, and historically...
Illiquid meaning they can't access the cash to pay for stuff, right?
Right. So it's fine. The lesson you learn, what I was taught in 1981 by people with a lot of experience, pioneers in the venture capital industry, is that when you put money into a venture capital fund or some other form of private equity fund or a hedge fund, or private equity fund, I should say first, you should only put money into that fund that you've written off in your mind. Because yes, it could go up 10-fold or 25-fold, but you could also lose all of your money. So the prudent way to think about that is to say, well, I can afford to lose 5% of my money or 10% or maybe 20%. But Yale, and the endowment officer there who's since passed away, he said, our commitment in the endowment to these types of things is, say, 0.5% of the endowment. Why don't we move that percentage up to 20%? He started doing it in the very infancy of venture capital and leveraged buyouts when the returns were far better than they've been in recent periods and hedge funds. So David Swenson was his name. And it was a stratospheric success. I mean, it was unbelievable. Other institutions at the time said, Yale's crazy, they don't know what they're doing. Then, of course, as Yale's endowment did really well, the others said, well, we've got to catch up. And so Harvard today is in a place where a big slice of its endowment, according to Ackman, is in private equity, is in hedge funds. And when you have the type of problem that we had from 7 to 9, it's precisely those funds that just crater. Because they're illiquid, you can't sell them easily. There are firms that make a specialty of buying these funds positions in crisis.
The provost.
Yeah, that's the person who actually runs the university. So Ackman notes that on the one hand, you have the asset side of the endowment is in precarious position. Thinking about the university, you have a situation where donors like Ackman and the big donors to Harvard are basically saying, fuck you. This is ridiculous. It's not what I signed up for, and this is a ridiculous response, and all of you should be fired, and we need to do a big house cleaning. So then I noticed that apparently, and I've got to check this, it's the university that is contemplating doing a bond offering because its revenues are less than its expenses. I mean, that is really risky stuff to borrow money when you're in a moment where your revenues are dropping and your expenses are climbing and your assets
Who would want to buy that bond?
Well, suckers.
Or maybe you think that Harvard will be there to pay it back eventually.
Maybe, but the real issue with this is I go back to base principles. Does Harvard University exist as a lawfully organized and validly organized, lawfully operated, validly organized, tax-exempt organization that is an educational public charity? Is that the case? Or do they have some special dispensation because they were created either in 1636 or 8 or 1650, depending on which story you want to think about?
But you're saying that's not known?
Well, I just think they're assuming, it's a big brand name, and they're just assuming that there is an interest rate at which investors will part with capital to have 5, 10, 20, 30-year money tied up associated with Harvard before they do their homework. And I think if you do the homework, you could come to the conclusion, if they do the bond offering, I want to see the prospectus and I want to see the risk factor section, because they better address this issue of whether they're lawfully organized and validly operated.
Guarantee they will not do that.
Well, I would hope they would. I mean, they have the benefit of all the graduates of the university, and they have their own law school. They should be able to think this kind of thing through. But
yeah, but they won't.
We'll see. I mean, they're in the crosshairs.
I don't think they will, Charles. I think this whole system has been set up to allow, we're the suckers. It's like when the beginning of Goodfellas, where Ray Liotta is saying, like, everybody else is the suckers. We need to get to the end of Goodfellas where they're all going to jail.
Yeah, well, I think we may be closer to that point than you think. So at the top of a bubble, which I don't think we're at the top now, I think we're heading down. At the top of the bubble, the skeptics for the newfangled inventions are typically, they're kicking themselves because they didn't get in early, and they refuse to believe that the game is over. So it's precisely at the wrong time, as the thing is crashing, that these skeptics say, maybe they were right about shitcoin, or maybe they were right about the internet, or maybe they were right about XYZ. And so in a euphoric environment, you get away with a lot. But when the crunch time comes, that's when the hard asses come out. And on an issue of is this bond offering, does it make any sense? A lot of sharks are going to be looking at this. The debt investors, in my experience, are much smarter than the equity investors.
And what, try to take over Harvard somehow?
Well, not take it over, but rubbish the bond offering. It's short it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Make money somehow at their expense.
Yeah. But you can't. Don't think you can take Harvard over. But you could launch a lot of. I would be questioning if Tish James is going to do a retrospective investigation into a Trump deal that is well over. What would stop a future attorney general 20 years from now to say, you know what, Harvard raised $1.65 billion illegally. It wasn't a public charity at the time. It didn't register properly and truthfully inside New York, where investors pony up money. It's a federal securities fraud because the money was raised across state lines. And, we're going to make an issue of it 20 years after the fact. Because that's the Tish James precedent. I do what I want. Or exactly. I should say I do what I want. It's just ridiculous.
And gain weight while doing
it.
You had sent me, we're going to need to go into this stuff in depth during the First Amendment Forum because it's just too much to deal with here. And also, Charles, last week or earlier, Sunday, we had Bob with us. People have been really responding positively to that video we did with Bob about Eric Adams' stupid plan to give out credit cards with Wole Hoaxum. And it had that
appropriately named. Right?
Yeah, we had that great picture of Wole hanging out at, I don't mean to derail because I know we have other stuff to talk about today, but this was good, what you were talking about with Phillips Exeter Academy. Do you want to mention that briefly?
Sure. So there are three of us brothers, and my youngest brother went to Exeter. In fact, I wanted to go to Exeter, and I might have gotten in, but Horace Mann advisor said, Exeter is the place you go if your parents are getting divorced. You shouldn't go. You're not going to go to. I think he went to Exeter or something like that.
Wait, where did you go?
Horace Mann.
Oh, right.
I stayed at Horace Mann. I was at Horace Mann. It started in 7th grade and went to 12th grade. And I wanted to switch to go to Exeter, to go away to school. And my advisor said, "You passed it already." I saw it.
Huh.
It's further down.
Where did this image go here?
If you just go down the page. Oh, that image you're looking for.
I'm looking for the one with
the two of them.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So my youngest brother was in the middle. Back then, he was class of '80. They kept track of your rank in class. So out of 350 students, he was in the middle. And even though our parents had 5 degrees from Yale, even though I was then at Yale and my next brother was at Yale, Exeter said to my brother, "We will not allow you to apply to Yale because we value our standing with Yale and we don't think you're going to get in, so we're not letting you apply." So you contrast that with this group here, Wole Tafadali, which means Pole Tafadali in Swahili means slowly, slowly, please. And this person, Claudine Gay, and I call bullshit on somebody who ended up being president of Harvard, where they do take, at least from memory, going back a long time, they did take scholarship seriously, and plagiarism was a hanging offense. It wasn't like, yeah, you could do it and come back in the way
Right.
Joe Biden did with his attempt to get on the law review. I mean, think about that knucklehead. You know, I'm in law school, I'm the bottom of my class. I know what I'll do. To get on the law review, I'll just take somebody else's work because I don't know how to do this shit, and I'll just change the name, of the author to me. And that makes sense.
Well, but think about it, though,
Cloudy
Charles.
Gay.
Then you find yourself in court with somebody who did this, and the prosecutor is Fannie Willis, who cheated her way to get there.
Right, exactly. And I think if you told me that Cloudy and Gay did this and then became, I don't know, an ice hockey coach, or
Maybe not that big a deal.
right, just something other than in academia, and something other than president of Harvard, which, like it or not, used to be a great institution, a world-class great institution. Don't tell me that somebody who cheated on her dissertation just started doing it then. Right. I think if you had a rigorous look back to, maybe if you look at her record, she got at Exeter, I'm sure they have records of what her grades were actually like. And then, how off the mark were her grades and other results versus the rest of the class that got into Harvard? Look at the people that went to Harvard. Right. Now tell me the GPA.
Was she given some special?
Of course she was.
I told you about the time that I was almost an ice hockey coach, right?
No.
Yeah, at the interview, I told them, you got to skate to where the puck is going. I came up with that. And they were like, get out of here.
What interview?
That didn't happen.
Oh, okay.
Wayne Gretzky came up with that.
Yeah, I know. I was wondering. I've heard that before.
That's a plagiarism joke, Charles.
I got it. You know who, my eldest was at St. Bernard's and left, and Wayne Gretzky's kid took the place. Yeah. Anyway.
Wayne Gretzky's daughter is like crazy beautiful.
Well, the wife is crazy.
The wife is
but they had big
beautiful.
Gambling problem. Anyway,
I don't know. We're getting off track.
Way off track.
Sorry.
But so on this question of the erosion of standards in academia, if you want to have low standards at Hamburger University, it's not good. But if we're at the forefront of fighting cancer and whatever in the medical school, and we're defending the Constitution at the law school, and we're, I don't know, what we're doing in the physics department and the math department at Harvard, you can't say, well, it's okay to just pass somebody else's work
This
off.
is a real thing.
I know.
I didn't know that.
Come on, Jason. That's where I really went. Yeah.
Is this real? Holy cow.
Yeah.
And then what? They train you how to be at McDonald's?
They train you.
This is like throwing chairs.
I was going to say,
one of the classes.
You saw that video of the woman who comes in with her son, her young son?
Oh, yeah. That was Wendy's, though. Whole different.
You sure?
I think it was Wendy's, because that university takes place in an octagon.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, no, that was terrible. But right there, you're seeing how she's training this kid to just be a menace.
Right. So
Hamburger University.
Returning again, I'm the one who brought it up, but returning to education and the loss of standards, we're now seeing it. It's not just because I'm an ancient fuck, excuse my language, but and it's natural for people as they age to look back and say, the youth today didn't have to fight. No, the standards, stuff that it passes for scholarship is ridiculous. I mean, we're seeing that. Kudos to the groups that are going and now checking all these peer-reviewed articles to see how much of them are bunk. But a lot of this stuff that comes across, gee whiz, I never knew that X, Y, Z was true. It's not true. You're making this shit up. Stop passing it off for scholarship, and let's get serious. We don't need safe spaces at universities. We don't need, it's not a something that charges you $82,000 a year for a 4-year program doesn't strike me as being all that tax exempt, right? This peer review of, not only apparently do we have peer-reviewed articles that are just garbage, But apparently there's a black market in selling, getting reviews sold. So these people are cheating. If you want a great review of your piece of garbage paper, just give me $1,000. And all, esteemed professor of gibberish says this is the best thing I've ever seen.
I don't understand what these people are trying to do. The example has been made, but it's like cheating for the test to become an airline pilot, and you get the job, and now what?
Well, you see, this is because you're told, and it's not just in the black community, you're told from day one, you need to go to college. You have to go to college. And I would say today that is absolutely not true. This morning I was in a little, a restaurant, a breakfast joint, and there was a guy there, I could tell he wasn't much of a student. He's a white guy, but he was some kind of plumbing distributor. And he really knew his shit. I mean, he's talking too loud on the phone, but he was taking somebody through, this is why you need this piece and not that piece, and we have to do this, and let's do it this way and not that way. And that kind of a guy, I would guess, in New York City,
pretty valuable.
Is probably making $200,000 a year or more.
Maybe more, right?
And people who have skills like that sometimes are not all that good thinking about, I don't know,
math and complex
algebra and
stuff, right?
or Shakespearean sonnets and stuff like that. I mean, and if you're really very handy, as my father was, and he had a special kind of mind, but if you're not quite at his level, and you're tearing things apart and putting them back together when you're 12, and you're so busy doing that you can't concentrate on your homework, you could be a lot better off just saying at the end of high school, you know what, I'm going to be an apprentice in a car shop or a plumber,
air conditioning, all kinds of stuff that people are doing all the time.
And as people are finding out increasingly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's probably, you'll have a much better life doing that. You won't have the burden of 4 years of not finding yourself in a year, piling on student debt maybe, and then hitting your head against the wall saying, I believe in plagiarism, and that's why you should make me president of the once finest university. You won't be in that place. You'll be doing something else that go back to fucking Haiti where her parents are from, and straighten that.
She could be in the cement business.
Well, it's just go into the family firm, make cement shoes.
Yeah.
Whatever they do down there with that stuff.
Probably something like that. There's so much for us to talk about. We've got Fannie Willis's boyfriend's lawyer, who's a dummy, and I think going to get dinged for perjury. Obviously, Mitch McConnell stepping down, but really this whole thread that we've got, there's a ton of stuff here, Charles.
And don't forget the Michigan results.
Oh, yeah, right. No, this is what I wanted to ask you about Michigan. Some stupid people on Twitter were like, Trump beat Nikki Haley by 20 points, but
41.
Or whatever, and then Biden beat this other person by. But isn't it pretty bad?
Let's look at that. We have time, I think.
But isn't it pretty bad?
No, that's horrible. We'll show you in a second why that's ridiculous. If we punch up Michigan primary results, Biden, and you'll get some form of a table. And when I looked at it, and maybe I had seen, here it is right here. Joe Biden gets 618,000 votes. Now, in theory, Biden won Michigan in 2020. We'll get to that later in the.
I like this. I like this. Uncommitted, 13.3.
Right.
Charles.
But just focus for a second on the 618, okay? And then add that to the 101, you've got 720, right? That's the total. The other votes don't really matter. 720,000 votes in Michigan, right? Now let's look at the Republican. How many votes did Trump get?
Ooh, more.
756 to Biden's 618, and Haley got 300,000, right? So,
but that was mostly Democrats, I think.
Maybe, but I think pure Trump versus pure Biden, he smokes him.
Yeah,
smokes him.
But isn't it also completely embarrassing that the incumbent is in a primary at all?
No, they can move. It's actually a good idea to have.
But they didn't do it for Trump last time, did they?
I forget what, I think they had to hold certain, I think they held certain primaries, but he was, he didn't face any real opposition. other than the Rhino Pukes, who conspired with people unnamed, as yet unnamed or unprosecuted, to do whatever they did in 2020. So I think the results that I see there are an epic rebuke of Biden.
Yeah.
And let's face it, I mean, Biden cannot get through 60 seconds without screwing up, and not like in a minor way. It's just obvious. These Italian satirists have now done 2 parodies of Biden, and one is worse than the next. And you know it. I mean, Trump said it years ago. He said, Biden's shat. S-H-A-T is the way he pronounces it. And he means shot.
Right.
But he says shat. And he is. I mean, he's just, if you compare a clip of Biden speaking now to Biden speaking in, say, 1988, when he was much younger, obviously, he's clearly on a negative path. And now, when people talk about, the Democrats are very quick to say, well, the only person who can have a real educated view on Biden's state of mental health is his own personal doctor. But that doesn't stop, or hasn't stopped this idiot who gave an interview in Salon saying that the pace of Donald Trump's dementia is worsening much more rapidly now, based on his observation, never having spent any time with Donald Trump.
Totally
and in
irresponsible.
And in violation.
Oh, right, the Goldwater rule.
Yeah.
The other thing that they're doing, though, and I didn't understand this for a few days, they're like, oh, Trump forgot Melania's name. He's going crazy. He's at CPAC, and he's talking about Melania, and then everybody applauds or whatever, and he looks to the right, and he said, isn't that right, Mercedes? Or something like that. Where if you don't know that Mercedes Schlapp is hosting CPAC and standing right there off camera when he looks and addresses her, he does say her name like right after talking about the First Lady, but it's clear that he's done with that part about the First Lady, and he's like, right, Mercedes.
No, I know.
But they spin that, and they try to make people think, oh, wow, we got to go over here, Charles. So they try to make people think that Trump is losing his mind, but he's not. And we're about to continue talking about this in the First Amendment Forum. People can join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. And thanks to everybody who's been joining on there. It's a great way for people to catch up on legacy content. And I had a phone call with that Sherry Sandor Kelly yesterday that people can hear for free on Odyssey. You can also get onto Substack, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Free to read the Twitter coup there. And also subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back. Stay with us.